There we go. All right, so welcome everyone to our Ontario Nature Steward Orientation meeting. My name is Marcus. I'm our new Nature Reserves manager. So I've been with Ontario Nature only since the end of January. I've met some of you virtually. Hopefully I can meet a lot of you on site this year. But my background is terrestrial ecology. I've done a lot of species at risk work in the past. A lot of sort of conservation of habitats for rare species, as well as population rehabilitation work. So I'm keen to chat with people about what they've seen on the nature reserves they steward, and I'm really excited to get out this year and hopefully see most of them. And I can turn things over to Thorania to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. You guys have probably seen my face. I'm the Nature Reserves Coordinator, and I lead a lot of the field work, and I coordinate a lot of the site visits with you guys, our stewards. Yeah, if at any point you guys have any questions or concerns, feel free to use the chat option and ask away. I'm going to pass it off to Melissa. You're on mute, Melissa.
Okay. All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Melissa. I'm the Nature Reserves ecologist. So my role is very similar to Thorania's. However, I've led a couple different projects, like the work on Peely Island that we do there. So yeah, happy to answer any questions you have.
Awesome. So you'll notice on this slide here, we'll share these numbers with everyone, but we do have work cell phone numbers now. So that's a new thing. When we're actually out in the field, it's probably the best way to reach us. We'll share them with everyone afterwards, but these are the phones that if we're out in the field, we'll have with us so we don't risk doing things like dropping our personal phones in a wetland, which may or may not have happened to folks before. Yeah, so let's move on to a land acknowledgement that Melissa is going to give.
Oh, yeah, thank you everybody for being here today. Since we're unable to gather in person, I'd just like to acknowledge the land that I am situated on at home here today in Brampton. So this place is in the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, Ojibwe, and Chippewa peoples, as well as the land of the Métis. This land is part of the treaty and territorial lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. I would also like to acknowledge our nature reserves that span across what we now call Ontario on the treaty and traditional territories of many First Nations. So since the beginning, Indigenous peoples have inhabited and taken care of these lands, which are still home to diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We commit ourselves to the work of reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, and through this land acknowledgement, our intent is to honor and show gratitude to those taking care of these lands for time immemorial, and as a sign of our respect and willingness to learn and heal. We are committed to caring for this land and each other.
All
right, so I'm just gonna, Thorania's just gonna go over the agenda now.
So today, this is an overview of today. We have our introduction. So we'd like to hear where you're from and which property you steward. And then next we have a Google Drive overview. We have simplified a lot of things around, so we'll chat about that more in detail. And if we have any questions, we can go through that at the end of the session if you have any. Then we're going to take a quick break. Next, we're going to talk about some new emerging invasive species found in Ontario. Then we're going to talk about OBBA, which also stands for Ontario Breeding Bird Atlas. And then we'll discuss some of our 2022 highlights and upcoming 2023 events. And then we have discussion and questions. So as some of you may recall, I've sent out a pre-orientation questionnaire to fill out. So we'll be breaking out into smaller groups and chat about that designated topic. And then after that, we're going to chat about some of the highlights from each of those sessions. And that's it.
Awesome. Thanks, Saranya. There we go. So yeah, let's maybe we'll go through people in the order they appear on my screen, and you can introduce yourself, the property you steward, and anything about how long you've been there. If you want to add something like that, that's good too. So we have David first.
Okay, Dave. I'm David Clipsham. Is that who you wanted?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. And my property is Malcolm Bluff Shores Nature Reserve on the Bruce Peninsula, a little north of Wyerton. And I've been steward there since the nature reserve was established a bit over 10 years ago.
Awesome. Thanks, David. Up next, we have a different David. I'm sorry, I don't know the last name. It says David's iPad.
David Young, and
Yep.
I'm at the Altberg Reserve up near Kinmount, and I share the responsibility of looking after that property with Randy Beekler, and Randy is right beside me.
Hi guys, I've been working on that property for about 10, 12 years, I guess, and I thoroughly enjoy it. It's a good opportunity to volunteer for community, and in taking care of the place, I've noticed that it's getting more and more use. COVID really upped the use. Us getting gravel in the parking lot so that people didn't feel like they were going to get stuck really helped. And I use a leaf blower to blow the leaves off the trails so that there's no ticks for people to deal with. So a lot of people seem to really appreciate that.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I think we've seen that in all of our natural spaces with trails. The last few years, there's been so much more use.
Mm-hmm.
Up next, we have, I don't know if it's Helen, but it says Helen's iPhone.
Yeah, that's me. I don't know if I'm on mute.
No, we can hear you.
Oh, you can? Okay. So I'm Helen Pynchon. I am one of the very new, so I'm hoping to gain some tips and advice on this webinar. New steward of the Crozier Reserve, along with Pedro. And it is the Halton North Peel Naturalist Club that I'm representing, and we're hoping to get some invasive projects done and some monitoring. Pedro is the scientist, so he's got some pretty exciting projects that he's would like to start doing. And as I said, I'm new to this, so I'm hoping to get some advice and glean some experience from the other stewards.
Awesome. Well, I hope you can get that out of this. We will certainly be talking about invasive species. Richard is up next. Oh, you're muted, Richard.
You're still muted, Rick. Yeah.
Let's try this again.
There we go.
It's Rick Barrett. I'm with the York Simcoe Nature Club, and we are stewards of the Cawthron-Mulock Nature Reserve, which is right beside Newmarket.
Awesome. One of the properties I have come to know already. Pedro's up next.
Hi everybody. Nice to meet you all, at least this way. As Helen's saying, we are with the Wilfred Crozier property that is just north of Milton, and we are new on the map. Our club, the North Peel Halton Naturalist Club, had already worked on that property a number of years back, doing a lot of conservation work and cleanup and so on. And we hope to continue working on it. And really, it's a small property, but it has a lot of research potential. And it's not used much by the public because there is no trails through it. Although you put a trail through it and you probably occupy the entire property. So the Blues Trail passes by one place, so that's sort of the main traffic through the property. But I think it's a very charming, and a lot of people are going to find a lot of interesting work to do there. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Pedro. Marcia's next.
Hello, everybody. I am recently retired and now moved to South Bruce Peninsula area. And I noticed the Sauble Dunes Nature Reserve is 5 minutes from my home in Oliphant. So I decided that I would, I'm brand new to this, just like Kellen was saying. And so that's the property that I'm looking after. The background I do have when I was in Sudbury was I owned a large forest that was a registered managed forest. So hopefully some of that experience will translate into all the new stuff I'm about to learn from everybody.
Awesome. Thanks, Marcia. Up next is Stephen.
I presume Stephen Yates. I guess I'm the only Stephen. Hi, everybody. My name's Stephen Yates. I live in Kingston. Several years ago, I bought a forest, which is along the eastern edge of Lake Gananoque. Lake Gananoque is about a 45-minute drive east of Kingston. And to make a long story short, that forest surrounds the Ontario Nature Forest, which is on the eastern shores of Lake Gananoque. So I became the steward of that property. So I like to think that I'm the steward of Ontario nature, but then I'm also the steward of my own forest as well, because my forest is going to get along very well without me.
Awesome. Thanks, Stephen. We have Emily next.
Hi, I'm Emily Conger, and this is Cameron Smith. Together, we are the stewards of, and probably, I don't know, one of some stewards of the Lost Bay Nature Reserve, which is another 15 minutes east of Stephen's property and north of Gananoque in that area generally. Okay, and we've been doing this since, we're thinking about since 2002, formally or informally, and then ever more formally. And Cameron has something else to say.
There's about 1,000 acres. Part of it, there's a small chunk of M&R land, and the Thousand Islands Watershed National Trust has a piece. But it's right on the St. Lawrence River and is a key link in the Continental Pathway that runs from Georgia right up to the Boreal Forest. That's where animals can cross. It's currently blocked at the moment by Highway 401. And we're working we work with A2A Collaborative, a conservation organization, to get safe passage of animals across the highway.
Thanks, Cameron. Yeah, that's a fascinating initiative, the whole A2A initiative. Now we have Peter.
Hello, I'm Peter Kratz, and along with Sheila Fraser and some others, not very many of us, we were stewarding a small property near Ingersoll District Nature Club. I thought I'd come to this. I don't have a lot of time. I've got to go do a whole bunch of university exams, but I thought I'd come in and see what was going on at this meeting and report back. We're trying to adjust to the frankly more bureaucratized Ontario nature these days. We only have like six or eight active members, so it's a lot to take on for us. But we're chugging along, doing the best we can.
Thanks, Peter. Well, hopefully we can work to make that as easy as we can for you. And then I believe we have another Peter.
Hi.
Hi, my name's Peter Barnett. Can you hear me? Good. Yep. My name is Peter Barnett, and I'm with the Manitoulin Nature Club, and we look after the Quarry Bay Nature Reserve, which is on the very southwestern end of Manitoulin Island. And we've been doing this for about 2 years now, along with several other colleagues.
Awesome. Thanks, Peter. We have Russ next.
Hi, Russ McGillivray. I'm representing the Headwaters Nature Club, which is centered in Orangeville. And our property we're stewarding is Willoughby, which is just south of there in Caledon. And this is the second year that we've had the stewardship. So we're, I guess we're slowly maturing and getting a handle on what we can and should be doing. We get terrific support from the Credit Conservation Authority, who are also in Willoughby doing a lot of research projects, and we work well together with them.
Thanks, Russ. Roberta's next.
Hi, my name is Roberta Buchanan, and I steward Sydenham River Nature Reserve, which is almost 300 acres. There's two groups. I belong to Sydenham Field Naturalist and Lambton Wildlife, and the two clubs take care of the property. It's not open to the public, but we've I've been the steward since it was purchased in 2016. And we're hopefully going to continue with the restoration on Wednesday and continue working toward returning it to as natural a space as possible for great habitat. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Roberta. Did I miss anyone? It doesn't sound like it. Oh, that's good. All right. So we can move on.
Yeah, you got everyone.
All right. Cool. There we go. It was a little slow. So I'm sure most of you know, it sounds like a lot of people have been stewards for quite some time, and I really am going to have a lot to learn from you. So I look forward to meeting folks out on site this year. Some of this will be old information, but for the newer stewards, I'll talk a little bit about Ontario Nature. So we were established in 1931 as the Federation of Ontario Naturalists, and we're an environmental charity run mostly through our membership, through donations and funding from various government and non-government organizations that we use for things like staffing, restoration, to assist with the purchasing and management of properties. We have a number of programs, including community science, which runs programs like the Reptile and Amphibian Atlas and the Breeding Bird Atlas, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. We also have a youth program, which we use to educate and empower Ontario-based youth in conservation around the province. We also do a lot of advocacy work. I'm sure you've seen action alerts from Ontario Nature, petitions, that sort of thing, work with government. One recent example is when conservation authorities were stripped of some of their regulatory ability recently, we created an action alert which allowed people to essentially download and send letters directly to their MPP. And we also hosted a webinar about the implications of the changes to those conservation authority and wetland regulations. But what we're here for today is the Nature Reserves program. So with help from yourselves and all the other stewards that aren't attending today, Ontario Nature monitors each nature reserve to develop appropriate management plans and to do our best at effectively managing each property. So for us, a large portion of our job consists of field work like species inventory, monitoring, restoration where possible. We also do ecological land classification on our properties to see how they're first to classify them and over time to see how they're changing. And we run various events like invasive species removals and guided hikes that are more community focused. So really our goal overall with this program is to build a province-wide nature reserve system that safeguards habitat for endangered plants and animals, protects biodiversity, sets benchmarks for scientific research, and creates opportunities for recreation and nature appreciation. So this should be pretty easy for everyone here, but I've got 3 plants up on the screen in this photo, or in these photos. Can anyone tell me what they are? Feel free to just jump in.
Showy lady slipper.
Yeah, that's one of them.
And yellow coneflower.
Yeah, I think it's gray-headed coneflower, but
Okay.
very similar.
Mm-hmm. Probably buckthorn, but I can't see it.
Oh, the trees, they could be buckthorn or maple saplings. What
Oh.
about the biggest photo here?
Yeah, the one over on the left.
Is
The
it
sundew, isn't it?
It is,
Sundew.
yeah. It's slender-leaved or spatula-leaved sundew.
An insect eater.
Yeah, I actually used to have some that I grew here, which they haven't been around for a while, but they're really cool plants. All right, nice work. So the
Was that a
nature is.
rat snake?
Sorry, what was that?
Was that a rat snake?
Let me see. I believe it is.
Yeah.
Actually,
would
a
say.
melanistic garter snake found on Peely Island.
Oh,
wow.
That's a huge garter snake.
It
Yes,
is.
they're huge.
Cool.
That was a trick
Wow.
question.
Yes.
You guys were there for the photo. I wasn't.
Hmm.
So the nature reserves program itself includes 26 nature reserves and 3 conservation easements, which totals 3,156 hectares, or about 7,800 acres. And this is the piece that this group is most interested in, I'm pretty sure. So Ontario Nature owns and oversees the conservation of these reserves. We have nature reserves as far north as St. Joseph's Island near Peely, and as far south, or not near Peely, near Manitoulin, and as far south as Peely Island. So these nature reserves feature diverse habitats from alvars to bogs to old growth forests or forests with old growth characteristics, and they're all unique in their own way based on the species, the habitat types, and what geographic features they're situated on. So we have photos here of Gananoque Lake, Stone Road Alvar, Malcolm Bluff Shores, and Bruce Alvar. These nature reserves are all part of our system for various reasons. Some are conserved because of extremely rare species and rare habitats on them. Some are conserved as part of a larger regional conservation strategy. And there's others that some have trail access, some don't. So there's quite a bit of variability in the properties that we oversee. So I will turn things over to Thoranya, who's going to talk about the Google Drive and its functionality.
Thanks, Marcus. Yeah, so I'm going to talk about everyone's favorite topic, the Google Drive. I know that this is not something everyone is comfortable with or familiar with, but that's okay. We are here for you beyond this orientation if you happen to have any questions or need any sort of guidance. The reason why we really enjoy working with Google Drive is because it is a platform that keeps everything organized, and it is a great way to share documents privately. You can click into past documents and field notes from previous years, add photos, and upload forms that you filled out. The main goal here is that we just don't want to lose any data, especially because we manage 26 nature reserves. So as soon as you've clicked the link that we've shared with you, you'll see something that looks exactly like this. For now, we're going to use Alpberg Wildlife Sanctuary as an example for this orientation. But if you'd like me to share your specific Google Drive link, please send myself or Melissa an email and we can do that for you. So the 2023 folder, as you see in the middle folder there, that's the folder that you'll access most frequently this year. Of course, you can access the 2022 folder and the reference documents and policies, which also has the health and safety protocols in more detail for you to read in your own independent time. But I was curious, has everyone clicked into the updated Google Drive link yet? Marcus, he's gonna set up some polls and hopefully keep it open for 20 seconds, and then we can talk about it. We'll give him a moment to set up the polls, but yeah.
All right, that should have showed up on people's screens.
Okay, people are nodding, so they do see it.
No, I didn't know. I thought that said Google Drive up there, so I would have said yes.
All right, I'll flip one of those then.
Okay.
Now I can't see who answered, but we have 8 of 11 people, or 9 of 12, that have said they've accessed this so far, which is awesome. Especially considering a lot of folks probably haven't been out yet this year, so that's great.
Yeah, that is really good to hear that. Okay, great. We'll move on to the next slide. So uploading files onto the Google Drive. If you're already familiar with this, feel free to zone out for a little bit. This can be a little bit repetitive, but if you're not, I'll be talking about this in further detail. So just on the left side where you see the circle, just covering the rainbow plus sign that says new. So you're gonna click that so that you can upload any sort of files or folders. Next slide, please. And then once you click the new plus sign, you'll see this menu pop up. And you would have to click File Upload. So it will give you the option to add any new file or folder. And on the right, you can see that you can browse your computer for any sort of scanned or saved documents. So whether it's saved on your desktop or any folder that's in your computer, you can access that using these buttons. And if at any point, you are a little bit confused, you also could refer back to this YouTube link and ask anyone at the office or myself during field season, and make sure to copy Marcus if anything needs to be addressed. Next slide. So now that we've talked about how to upload files, I'm going to talk about the new folders. So once you click into the 2023 folder, as you see here, there are a lot of items in there. So if you are conducting any sort of monitoring protocols, there are specific folders that you'll see, and that includes salamander surveys, vernal pool monitoring, salamander, and snake monitoring. Some stewards are conducting more monitoring protocols than others, but that's okay. It's whatever we've discussed in our previous fall or winter meeting. And then next we have our photos folder. Just as a tip, please make sure to label your photos if possible with just a small descriptor, just so that we know what you're looking at, whether it's a cool fungi or a cool bird, just let us know. And if you don't know the ID, that's totally okay too. It's just that sometimes when we see like really cool photos, we just don't know if you're looking at the landscape in general or if you're looking at something specific. So having that little descriptor in the title would be helpful. Next, we have a PDF version of
How do you put that on?
Pardon?
How do you put that on? I can have a photo from your cell phone, but how do I put a title on it?
On each individual photo, so you can right click. Is this Helen?
No, it's Emily.
Oh, Emily, sorry. Okay, Emily, so what you can do is once you've uploaded the pictures, you have to right click and then a menu will pop up and it'll give you the option to rename. And then once you rename to whatever descriptor that you prefer, it'll show up. But I can also give you—
That work on Mac? We don't have right and left click on Macs.
Oh, on Max? I'm not too familiar with Max, but I can definitely show you some links that would be helpful for you after the stewardship orientation, if that's possible.
It might be the options button, the keyboard.
Okay.
With the Mac. So it's one of those ones that allows you to call that secondary menu. And it should allow you to rename. Or sometimes double clicking on the name of the picture, it might switch to an editing mode.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. And then you can edit that way. Thanks, Pedro.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Did that answer your
Emily,
question,
we can.
Emily?
We can follow up with some more detail in an email for you, Emily, as well.
Yeah, thanks. Sounds good. So yeah, there's also a PDF version of your specific nature reserve map. You can feel free to print that on your own and bring it to you to your annual inspection or site visits. And then we have our combined annual inspection and work plan Excel sheet. We've combined it so that you don't have to go through multiple folders and waste time. It's all in one collected document. And then the next item we have is a KML file. So you can download this file onto your phone for navigational purposes. And then lastly, we have AI data sheets so that you can print and bring with you into the field and fill out as you visit your designated nature reserve. Next slide, please. Thank you. So once you click into the annual inspection and work plan Excel sheet on the Google Drive, this is the first thing that you'll see. Within this section, at the bottom, you'll see different tabs and resources necessary for a successful annual inspection. It is expected that annual inspections are done at a minimum of 3 times a year. Some stewards may have different requirements depending on our fall meeting. And this is catered for our more remote properties, which won't be visited as often for safety purposes. Next slide. But yeah, the annual inspection protocol, it's a 5-page document that covers instructions on how to complete an annual inspection, how to effectively manage collected data, and how to record. And this would include, issues on the reserve, species lists, areas covered within your designated nature reserve, and visitation trends. There are associated data sheets you can check out at the end of the protocol as well. Next slide. So this is the work plan, and we would really appreciate if you could fill this out. Once you're back from the field visit, you have data sheets in this Excel sheet to fill out, and it is best practice to enter the data in as soon as possible, just to ensure that nothing is forgotten. So this is done within the spreadsheet of the annual inspection tab. So when you enter data here, it is super helpful for you and for us within our recording process. Alternatively, if you do have trouble entering this data in, you can always take a picture of your data sheets or scan in your data sheets and email them to us. So then that way the data is collected one way or another. Your work plan, it essentially covers what you'll be insured for. So anything outside of that, it will not be covered by insurance. So that's why it's really important for us to go over your work plan every single year. Thanks for zooming in, Marcus, but on the right-hand side, you'll see 3 columns for you to fill out. Perfect. And then in the red, they're just examples of what you can fill out, and it's supposed to guide you in case you are lost. I know that sometimes some of these things can be really overwhelming. So these red little text boxes are just to help you guide what you can and cannot write. And this just goes to show that it's just to reiterate what you've done in the past year. So in the spring, you can write down the date, what you've done, or if there's no observations, for example, you can always write that in too. Any sort of detail the more, the better, I think. But anything that you need to write down would be in here and in the annual inspection tabs. Are there any questions before I move on to the steward agreement and health and safety?
I have a question regarding, as you know, I write some journals of the work I do. On top of this spreadsheet, which obviously needs to be completed, can I submit those journals under the photos section?
Yeah, you can. I think for your case, I think it would be ideal for you to upload your site summaries in the 2023 folder. And then because you also have photos included in your documents, right?
That's right. That gives context to the comments. Yeah.
Yeah. But we can also talk about this
Not yet, but
aside from our
see how I
stewardship
can
orientation.
access it when I want to.
Okay.
And do I want to?
Or if you want to.
If I want to, that's right.
Yeah, that's just my own way of working things
Yeah,
out.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can talk about that after.
Okay.
No problem.
Now, the other question I have is with species checklist.
Yeah.
Are you gonna go over that one or?
We can go over that one. Do you have the Google Drive link open, Marcus?
I don't know.
Right now, I'm checking it. I have it in front of me. It's just there are. How do you where do you include that you have a new species that maybe was not in the checklist? Do you change the checklist? Do you alter the checklist, and then write it also on the report that the species was added?
Yeah, that would be ideal if you could add that the species wasn't previously in the Excel sheet, but you've added it onto that. That would be great.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Thanks. That was a great question. Any other questions?
I have used the computer for communication, not for data.
Okay.
Marcia has a question in the chat about doing a quick show. I'm not sure if that's for the species list or...
That was just if you had a chance to go and show how you can rename a photo.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I will give Marcus a moment just to open the Google Drive link. And then that way we can go over that together. Or maybe we can go over that at the end just to give you a little bit more time. Marcus, would that be okay?
Yeah, let's go over it at the end. Or what we can also do is I can record myself doing it and then add it into the video. I think I have the ability to do that, but let's do it at the end while the questions are being done. Okay. So I can stop sharing the screen and then go and do it and bring it back up.
Okay, sounds good. I didn't know that was possible, so that's fantastic. But yeah, at any point, if you, during the field season, if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to any three of us and we'll be more than happy to answer your questions. Okay, so now I'm just gonna move on to the stewardship agreements. So if you haven't done so already, please sign your stewardship agreements. It is really necessary for individuals and or clubs to sign so that you are covered. You can use the free Adobe PDF version to sign your agreement. But if you don't have access, if you're just having trouble, just send me an email and we can figure that out together. Next slide. So now we're going to talk about health and safety. Within the Google Drive, we have a more detailed version of the health and safety protocol available for you to read. I would suggest that you would read that before heading into the field season this year. There are always some really good tips and reminders to keep in mind of before heading out. One thing to note is, like this, at the end of the day, we want everyone to be comfortable and safe. Some of our nature reserves are very remote, and again, safety is our biggest concern. So before heading out into the field, please keep in mind of the weather, bring water with you and bring along a steward with your field visits whenever possible. Ticks. So as you know, their populations are increasing and moving more north. So doing simple things like tucking your pants into your socks or wearing lighter colored clothing really makes a big difference. Doing a tick check once you get home in front of a mirror are also really good precautions. Here we have two types of ticks found in Ontario. We have the American dog tick and the black-legged tick. The American dog tick does not transmit Lyme disease. And as you can see, there are different colorations and patterning between the adult female and male. And then with the black-legged tick, they can transmit Lyme disease. And with the adult female, they have more of a roundish body with a brownish center. And then the male has more of like a white rim with a brown body. So make sure you keep note of that after you head out of the field. Chainsaw and motorized equipment usage. Anything that requires a license in our nature reserves, we do require a copy of a license before you can do any chainsaw work. This is for your safety and for the safety of our organization as well. Venomous snakes. So the Massasauga is Ontario's only venomous snake, though it will only bite in self-defense if it's threatened or harassed. It has a triangular head and a tail that ends in a small rattle that creates a buzzing sound when the tail shakes. The body is gray to dark brown with darker brown butterfly or saddle-shaped blotches on the back with alternating blotches along the sides. And they're the only Ontario snake with vertical or cat-like eyes. So when you're out during those kind of regions, especially in the Bruce Peninsula, wearing rubber boots and just keeping your eyes and ears open for any movement or rattling sounds would be ideal. And if you have any more questions regarding these topics, feel free to reach out to us.
As a kid, I used to play with them.
Next slide, please. So preventing heat exhaustion and heat stroke. As I mentioned before, always checking the weather before heading out is ideal, and always keeping hydrated, wearing light and loose clothing, wide brimmed hats, staying indoors during heat waves is a good idea. Wearing sunscreen, avoiding alcohol before heading out are all really good precautions. Next slide. For lightning and thunderstorms, please stay indoors if it's not looking too good outside. If not, head back to your vehicle, wait 30 minutes inside your vehicle until you hear that last thunder, and then you can go back outside. Dealing with the public, people are usually nice, but there are always, one or two rotten potatoes. So there's no need to act as an enforcement. Even monitoring behavior and just reporting that to us is ideal. And again, we just want you guys to be safe. There's break, but if there are any questions, this is a great time to ask. But here's a chance for you guys to grab a snack or move around or do whatever you need to do.
Well, it looks like it. I see video turning back on. And all right. I'll turn things over to you then, Melissa.
All right, so I'm just going to talk about some invasive species as well as some newer ones that you might not be aware of to look out for when on the property. So the Invasive Species Center, which we're showing the website right here, supports Ontario Nature through funding to assist with invasive species removal events, as well as helping us purchase tools to do these projects. So on this slide, we have a picture of the front page of their website. So if you go to invasivespeciescenter.ca, you can find information and management strategies on a number of different species, invasive species in Ontario. And they're constantly updating these as new information comes out, and because they use adaptive management plans. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So common buckthorn is something that I'm sure a lot of you have seen on your properties. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about this common invasive. So it's a woody shrub growing more than 7 feet, and they have dark green leaves with butter knife-like serrations on their edges. The bark has small horizontal stripes called lenticels, and its cambium layer, or the layer just below the bark, is orange, and it's easy to spot in the fall as it stays green with its leaves on after native vegetation has lost its leaves. So buckthorn has really deep roots, and it's recommended that it's removed in the fall if possible, when the soil is soft. And this way you can get all the roots out so that it can't regrow. Otherwise, if they're too big to remove that way, you can girdle the bottom to the part of their bark where it turns orange. And this will just slowly leach its basically nutrients from it. You go to the next slide, Marks. Thank you. Okay, so hemlock woolly adelgid is newer to Ontario. So it is a small aphid, and you can see the little black spots underneath this hemlock leaf. And basically, the main way you can see it is through its eggs, which are the white woolly fuzz that you can see in between the branches and along the branch. So this has only been found in 2 places in southern Ontario, down by Niagara, and I believe just around the GTA, around Oshawa. So this one, you can identify it on your property by looking underneath the leaves or around the tree on the ground once the branches have fallen. So another one to really keep watch for, because they, I know the Canadian Food Inspection Agency is currently trying to manage it. So it's an important thing to inspect and report on early. Next slide, please. So the spotted lanternfly isn't found in Ontario, but a small population has been found in Buffalo, New York, and it's undergoing heavy management in Pennsylvania. So the main threat of this species is its large number of host species that it can have. So over 70 potential host species have been recorded, including many native trees. And the biggest threat is to commercial fruit trees. Adults mainly feed on the tree of heaven or willows, and it lays its egg masses in October, and you can see 2 different forms, either the uncovered brown that I've circled there, or in the white egg mass that just covering the eggs. As well, you can find its nymphs. They're about 2 centimeters in length, so they're fairly visible, and they have black with white spots early in the year, and then in the summer to fall, they are orange with white spots. So if you see any invasive species, you can take a coordinate, a photo, or just let us know, and we can report it for you, or you can report it through the Invasive Species Center website. So yeah, that's it for invasive species. If you guys have any questions, we have a question period at the end, but I'm going to pass it over to Marcus to talk about the Ontario Breeding Bird Atlas.
Thanks. So I mentioned it earlier, but have any folks here participated in a breeding bird atlas previously? All right. Doesn't sound like it. So this is going to be new information, which is good. So this is a large scale citizen science project, the goal of which is to map the relative abundance of about 300 bird species in Ontario. So it's a large scale volunteer effort, essentially a large scale survey that's broken down into these grid squares that you see on the screen. This uses an example of warbling vireo. It was one that it's pretty widespread and shows all of the different things that the survey might come up with. So this is the third breeding bird atlas. The second was about 20 years ago. So working off that interval, this lets us essentially track occupancy and abundance of a bunch of different species over time. So this sort of work is very important to see how species abundance changes and how we impact those species on the landscape. So with this being a citizen science project, more participation means more success. I know of areas from the reptile and amphibian atlas which used a similar sort of grid square method where if there wasn't surveyors, there's no way to know that that species is there, even if they are. So we're working with partners like Bird Studies Canada, the Ontario Field Ornithologists, the federal government, and the TD Friends of the Environment Foundation to try to essentially get as much of the province covered as we can. So the reason I'm talking about this today is because nature reserves make ideal survey sites. Often these are places where, for the ones without trails, we're the only ones going and surveying them. So the way this breeding bird atlas is set up is each region has coordinators that oversee essentially the grid and who's surveying what areas. So my hope is that I can connect those folks with people who are stewards of nature reserves that are in their regions. And if you're planning a visit, you can bring them along, or they can go out to the property, but you might have some advice about, oh, you know, this is a good place to bird on the property because you have all of that knowledge of what's on the ground. So the hope is we can expand this into the nature reserves. And if folks are okay with me sharing that information, then I'm hoping to do that in the next couple of weeks. Does anyone have any questions about this before I move on? All right.
Yes,
so,
I do it.
Oh, yep.
I
Go
do.
ahead.
It's
ahead,
Cameron. We had a superb bird watcher from the Kingston Field Naturalists who came out a couple of times every year. Refuses to do it now because you insisted that he sign a stewardship agreement, and he said, I'm not going to do that. So if we have somebody come out, do they have to sign some sort of agreement?
If they're connected with the Breeding Bird Atlas project, they shouldn't need to. I think that will only be if they're actually acting as a steward of the property and doing visits for that reason. So I can look into it, Cameron, and I will follow up with you about that. I'll see who is in charge of that region and get back to you about it.
Okay, thanks very much.
Yeah, and hopefully we can get someone out there. Any other questions? All right, so I'll go through some 2022 highlights. This is a lot more than this was done. This is like a high-level snapshot of some of the stuff that went on at our nature reserves and some things that, as a group, I think everyone here should be proud of. So we acquired funding for Phragmites removal. That's going to take place at a couple of nature reserves using a specialized herbicide called Habitat Aqua. So we're going to be tackling some of the more troublesome Phragmites patches, the ones that can't easily be managed. In terms of invasive species removal, there was about 700 buckthorn shrubs removed, 13 kilograms of periwinkle, and last year, almost half an acre of Phragmites and almost a quarter of an acre of garlic mustard across our nature reserves. And for those of you who have removed or are familiar with Phragmites and garlic mustard, you'll know how significant that is, how much garlic mustard can grow in a quarter of an acre. We also hosted 3 planting events and planted 745 trees and shrubs into restored field habitat. We also followed up by monitoring 35 plots in those restored areas. So over time, those plots, by continuing to monitor them, will help inform us whether this restoration work is taking the trajectory that we want it to. We'll be able to tell, are the native species establishing effectively? Are there pressure from invasives like you often see in some of these restored fields, or have the methods that we've used worked effectively? We've also monitored, with the help of the stewards, 40 bird boxes at Cawthron-Mulock, Kinghurst Forest, and Petrel Point, and found over 30 tree swallow eggs in those bird boxes. Last, we hosted a BioBlitz and carbon assessment monitoring event to improve the natural inventory across properties. Does anyone else have anything they want to add? Any highlights from this year, things that we're especially proud of?
Marcus, I don't want to highlight anything, but could I ask you, at the Lake Gann property, in the Gananoque River, there is a fair amount of Phragmites developing. So in areas like that, if we inform you of that, is it then on your plan to have this herbicide put in, or how are you handling that type of thing?
It will depend on the property, but I think that's one property that we're applying for permits for management on this year. So essentially the way that usually works, unless we have existing funding, is if you make us aware of it, we'll map it as soon as we can to determine how big the patch is, and then we'll apply for funding to then manage it the next year. So sometimes that'll be herbicide treatment, sometimes it might be cutting. It'll really depend on where it is and how large the patch is. But I think that is in the plan for this year, though I'm not 100% sure of the scale of the work. What we try to do too is connect with other agencies that share bordering properties, because as I'm sure you know, if you remove the Phragmites on one property, but it grows up to the property border, well, it's going to be right back in 1 or 2 years. So we try to collaborate with others to do that as well. Oh, I see a question from Emily or Cameron.
Yes, we're wondering whether or not the Phragmites, we've been mentioning it now for several years. Is it going to be dealt with this year at Lost Bay?
That's the plan.
Great.
As far as I know, we'll get in touch with you guys about that separately. I'm in the process of applying for all the necessary permits to do that work.
Thanks, Marcus.
Yep. Anything else? All right, well, I'll move into our 2023 events. So I want to let everyone know about these events that we have coming up this year. I'm sure some of you have heard about them already, but May 27th, 28th weekend, we have a BioBlitz at the Sauble Dunes Nature Reserve. May 27th, there's going to be some guided hikes from different experts, and the 28th is going to be sort of a self-guided walk around the property to take inventory of any species you might find. So it'll be broken up into sort of structured and less structured, but we'll still be there on site both days. The June 10th weekend, we have the annual gathering in Sudbury, something I'm really looking forward to attending. Tentatively, we have a planting event taking place at Cawthron-Mulock Nature Reserve on May 20th. This is going to focus in some wetland areas that are in the process of being restored. We're going to plant some, I guess I should say wet meadows, but we're going to plant some wetland suitable trees and shrubs and hopefully try to establish something in an area that's otherwise grass. We also have, again this year, a Sydenham River Nature Reserve restoration planting event. That's the September 23rd weekend. And it's sort of an ongoing restoration event at that property where pits and mounds have been created and we are planting into those fields. And over time, we're going to be doing infill planting into them.